Hello, everyone. My name is Stephen Hall from Spectrum Ensemble. We will all introduce ourselves in a minute. But we are here to just have a little conversation between the three of us about accountability and anti-racism in our percussion community and how we can do that in a more productive, positive way. Essentially, I've seen this, and I think a lot of communities in different disciplines and professions are all in the same spot, where we're sort of stuck in this endless cycle of someone makes a misstep and they get called out on it, right? There's like some lack of diversity in something or some sort of racism related thing. And they apologize for it. Maybe they don't apologize for it. But the thing is that it's never handled in a productive way that empowers us to grow as a community and move forward, right? So we're hoping to just model that positive accountability a little bit, maybe jolt our community out of that cycle so that we can actually start making some real progress on this and maybe give some people tools, right? So before we even start, I wanted to preface this with who this conversation is even for, right? This conversation is not for people who don't think that lack of diversity is an issue, that racism is an issue. This conversation is for all of the not racist people who want to help, realize that there's a problem, but just don't think they have the tools all the time. I already introduced myself, but so before we dive into it, do you want to introduce yourself, Jamie, and then Adam?
Hi, I'm Jamie Esposito. I am one of the co-founders of Spectrum Ensemble. We are a new music ensemble that promotes LGBTQ representation and diversity in the classical music scene.
Thank you so much for having me, first of all, Stephen and Jamie. It's really nice to be sharing this with you. And I'm really, really happy to talk about this kind of topic all the time. My name's Adam Tan. I make videos on YouTube about percussion on a show called The Studio. I'm based here in Perth, Western Australia. It's very hot over here at the moment. But I also am the director of Marimbafest Australia. We're a volunteer-led organization who strives to empower young students of all backgrounds, all walks of life to basically just be themselves. And we make events like concerts, we run a youth ensemble, and we also do this festival called Marimbafest.
Adam's going to talk about what happened with Marimbafest, but I just want to preface it also with, and you'll know what happened once he explains it, right? But he's already apologized for this. Marimbafest has already officially apologized. This is not an apology video, right? I just wanted to preface it with that.
Adam's volunteering to help, use his tool to help other people.
Exactly. So, that said, why don't you dive into it? Tell us what happened.
Sure thing. Thanks so much for explaining it that way. That's a really good way to frame it. So Marimbafest, obviously we run this festival every year. Okay, it was supposed to run last year, but COVID obviously, and like finance and things like that. And so this year we had to do this. We were tasked to do one that was like a local version with no overseas artists, because Australia right now has a very strict hotel quarantine program. Even Australian citizens are unable to come back at the moment unless they have an exemption. So it's very hard to get people to come in the country for all the right reasons. Obviously, like COVID is a very serious thing, and we take that responsibility very seriously. So basically what happened was, I think it was a very big mistake on my part, especially because I authorized it. So once again, I know you said I already apologized and all that, but I want to say it again, just to be very clear. I'm really sorry to all the people that felt that way about our post, because I totally get it. Like, it's really disheartening to see a lineup of artists that don't represent you. Okay, I think this is something that I've felt a lot growing up in Australia. So when people were reaching out to me, I was very much like, this is something we need to fix straight away. And I'm not saying that we're like doing everything perfect. Everyone always has more to do. But I think it was really nice to hear from people like Stephen and Jamie telling us, this is what you can do to change. And these are some solutions that are actually very simple. So one thing that we had not thought of was using Zoom like this, and inviting artists from around the world who represent different types of people, so that the people who are going to join our festival will be like, oh, now I can identify with the lineup instead of a lineup of mostly white people. And that, to me, I've been fighting with that so much, when it comes to like jobs and to opportunities around here. So I totally get it. And I'm just so glad that we can work together in this way in the future. And we will keep doing that as we keep going on, I guess.
I think it's really significant, I think, to note that like you're a minority, I'm a minority, like we can still make mistakes, right? Like, and we do make mistakes. Like everyone is going to make mistakes, and it's all about like how we handle it in a constructive way, like as people who care about these things. Like everything you said is really great. Like it's just a mistake, but now it's an opportunity to make it into like a moment of progress, a teaching moment.
I think one thing that confuses me with all of this happening, right? A lot, not even in percussion, this is happening everywhere. Things are getting brushed under the rug to save face. And that's the problem. People are trying to save face instead of just apologizing and trying to grow. But the thing that is still shocking me is like what happened over the summer, the whole Black Lives Matter movement, how everyone was so involved. And then moving forward with all of this, they're not bringing everything they just saw into their own program. Another issue we're seeing is faculty members who are part of these all-white casts being okay with it, and like why that's an issue. And so something that really got me triggered is like, okay, sure, maybe you worked really hard, you think you deserve it, but wait, you're a professor, you're a teacher. How dare you instill those values to your students and then go do this? That's when I start getting really triggered. And I know there's way more to it, but if you're not teaching to be a teacher, stop doing it. I'm really sick of people who are trying to be performers but need jobs becoming teachers, because like, yes, you should be a good player to teach, but your job is to not make the best players, it's to make non-shitty humans. And if you're not doing that, you're not actually doing your job. So I'm getting really frustrated when I see these casts coming out now who preach one thing so vocally and so subtly do stuff like this, because it's not going unnoticed. And it doesn't make you look good. And then it's just sad. It's just disheartening. Just say sorry. Lose that gig. Who cares? Where are your morals? Where are your values?
I think a lot of what you're speaking to is has to do with people like centering themselves in these issues a lot, right? So the whole like, teachers not teaching for the right reasons, right? That's sort of like, the teaching to make yourself look good or to build up your resume or something, or you want students who, are achieving at a high level. The distinct parallel there to how people react to inappropriately to being called out for racism and stuff like that. People are overly centering themselves and trying to, like, they get defensive. I think defensiveness is a huge thing that I see that people do wrong, is like they're trying to save their reputation or something. And it's like, your reputation doesn't need to be saved. The best thing you can do to save your reputation is to take full accountability. You don't even have to explain yourself, all that people want to do is know that you have, for you to acknowledge that you've caused hurt, and commit to doing better and learn to do better, right? But too often I see people getting defensive. They'll put out some very HR-esque type statement about, oh, we are a non-racist organization, we're committed to, equity in all forms, blah, blah, blah. But it's just always very clear when that's driven by a self-centered desire to save your own reputation and to not lose business or something, as opposed to like really caring about this and wanting to advance the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Great. Check. Next topic.
Yeah, we had like a whole little like progression of topics that we wanted to do, and we just jumped all over the list.
Did we nail
That's all good. That's all good.
a couple more? Well, I had to go with it.
Yeah.
But I still want to ask you guys the question, because I think it's really important that everyone hears it from you guys. I really want to ask you guys for people who want to be allies, who want to do more and fulfill those roles, because I think people think that allyship is very difficult, or they're going to have to, peel away their skin to be able to. No, right? So what are some things they can do, or resources that they can turn to? Because I know that you both know a lot more about this than a lot of people. So it'd be really nice for you to share that.
Yeah, so I think a lot of things that can be done are so subtle and so simple. Sign-offs, labeling with your name. So you see how me and Steven both have, he has he, they, and I have they, them. So that's just like, it welcomes the queer community into your world. You just made yourself aware of the community because you know that there are more than two genders type of thing. So you would be like Adam, Tan, he, him. And you can put that on your email. And it's just a very subtle way of students, people, friends, colleagues knowing you're an ally. For example, just like in your situation, if you wanted to do something where you had just a video background, you throw posters up that are Black Lives Matter, that are Trans Lives Matter, just like any type of thing you believe in that you want people to see you believe in. Just subtle reminders that people exist and we need to support them no matter what. You know what I mean? So I think those are two very, very simple ways to just show allyship. Shirts, signs, posters.
Yeah, I think, and those are ways of like signaling that you're an ally, right? But I think people also need to sort of do some, it's a lot of learning, right? So those things that you just listed are things that you can do like now and like sort of be a little bit more supportive, right? But to me, and I'm realizing this more and more, and there's some writing out there about this, allyship is it's an active stance, right? It's not something that it's not an identity. You are not an ally, right? If you're an ally, you are actively supporting, right? There was an article that I really liked recently called Accomplices, Not Allies. I think it was by some indigenous people's organization. But basically it's like talking about how allyship, is an action you have to take. Also, Britton Renee Collins, someone from our percussion community, recently had a great blog post about this. Allyship is something that you have to actively do, right? And that can be hard. Like, how are you an active ally? First of all, I think a lot of people, like I said at the top, like a lot of people don't have the resources. They don't even realize what all the problems are. So a lot of it has to do with education. Like, you have to educate yourself. You have to sort of open your eyes so that you can even see what the problems are. Like, how often, do so many people, something gets called out that's racist and they had no idea it was even racist. So you sort of have to educate yourself, and educate yourself from sources who are, if it's, to do with race, from people of color, right? If it's to do with misogyny, from women, right? If it's to do with homophobia, from queer people. So there's also groups in music that are sprouting up. There's some Black-led groups or POC-led groups that are addressing anti-racism. But there's even one that I want to mention that's might even be a better starting point for a lot of especially white people who aren't that involved yet in this sort of mindset. And it's called New Music Equity Action. And it's new music, but they're very open to welcoming other people. Basically, it's a group of a lot of people. There's like a lot of representation from like really big groups. So Percussion, Eighth Blackbird, International Contemporary Ensemble. And like, people who aren't part of big organizations, everyone. But they're essentially coming together and like talking about what the problems are in the music industry, especially the new music, but it's also like education, like institutions and stuff. they're talking about what the problems are, and they're brainstorming ways to fix them and coming up with resources for people. So that's a really good environment to go and talk to people in an open way about, just to open up your mind, or to brainstorm of how to solve these problems. Because the thing is, like, no one has the answers to all these, right? Like, it's going to take a lot of work on everyone's part to come up with the answers. Like I said, also, you could, listen to people of color. There's a lot of great, like, Instagram accounts you could follow that are like activists in this area. One of my favorites is Janaya Future Khan. I just told you about them recently, Jamie. So there's tons of resources out there. It's just like a matter of consuming them and like widening your perspective. And then the after the learning part comes action, right? You have to commit to actually standing up in solidarity with people. So, for example, we didn't mention the Stephen seminar thing yet, right?
No, we didn't.
Yeah, not yet.
So,
yeah.
Actually, do you want to someone else introduce that? Because I've been talking for a long time.
That's fine. I didn't know we were dropping this fat bomb.
Let's drop it.
Okay. So, Stephen, you can sum it up a little bit more after I give the baseline. So, from what I have seen, We Hire Stephen Seminar is putting on their seminar, right? And they hired an all-white faculty, and over 50% is male. And like, if you want to go really far into it, like, they're all from the same teacher. Like, it's as little diversity as it can be. If you're working up the chain, that doesn't mean everyone on that panel doesn't have something to offer. But in terms of diversity, no, there is not. Right? And so then we asked them to hold themselves accountable. And they responded by offering 2 scholarships for people of color. And summarizing these are not my words. These, I'm not this smart. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm reiterating what Stephen has said. It's right, and I agree with it. You can't throw money on this problem. So if you're offering people of color a scholarship, you're appealing to like the 2% that's even allowed to have access to everything they need to be qualified to be one of the 2 people who are going to get that scholarship. So that's like truly just throwing water on a spray bottle on fire. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like misting a fire, like didn't do much of anything. It's not welcoming. Like, I wouldn't send any of my students, honestly. Like I said earlier, I was getting mad because if you're going to be a teacher, you can't preach one thing and then just do the complete opposite in something else. It's just very confusing to me. It doesn't make sense. That's basically what the problem is. There has been no solution, like real solution. The biggest solution has been throwing money on the problem.
Yeah. And also, like, my biggest thing, because there's problems with the fact how this scholarship thing, right? But my problem with it comes even before that, and that they did not take direct accountability at all.
There was no apology. It just happened.
Yeah.
There was no acknowledgement that they did anything wrong. They sort of quietly released this scholarship thing, which has its own definite issues. But yeah, it was not positive accountability. And on top of that, now that they've done the scholarship thing, there's people out there like, oh, thank you so much for doing this great thing for our community. You know, like it's classic virtue signaling. So yeah, it's just really frustrating, and it's exactly what you shouldn't do when you get called out for something, right?
I just wanted to say that I've been following this seminar for a few years, and I've always thought, there's been plenty of time for them to make changes. Obviously, being based in somewhere like North America, where you have access to hundreds of non-white educators that could easily have been even on their own roster. It just baffles my mind that you can't do something simple like that, and that they would think it's okay in this day and age to have this kind of life. It made me like remember when I was signing up for, this is a bit of a sidetrack, but I used to be signing up for intensives when I was in my 5th year of studies in the United States, and I was looking for intensives that had people of color on the lineup because I thought maybe it'd be easier for me to relate to. There was almost none, always zero. So it was very difficult. And this was just like, this is 5 years later and it's still the same. So we're just really glad that we're on the same page about this one.
It really shows that it's not a priority to them, And then, but I also wanted to tie it back to the whole thing of not centering yourself and listening to people of color, right? Because that is, I think, their biggest mistake that they made is that they tried to handle this themselves, and they obviously do not have the tools, the knowledge to handle it in a sensitive way.
No one diverse works with them.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I personally, when we were first calling them out on social media for this, I reached out because I know 2 people on the faculty personally, right? And those people, they didn't decide the faculty, they just got an email, hey, do you want to be on the faculty for this seminar? And they said yes, right? So they were ideally just as surprised. And I think, like most people, they're like not racist people, right? So I reached out to the 2 people who I know personally on the faculty, and I tried to talk to them about how they could, from their position of privilege as faculty members of this seminar, how they could be a part of positively holding Malatek and Lee Stevens accountable. And from one of them, they didn't respond for like 4 days, and then they just sent like a 1-line response. We're handling this internally, thanks. And that was it, right? And then from the other person, there was this like long extended back and forth, which took a lot of my time. But this long extended back and forth of, oh, well, I consider myself 100% an ally, but my allyship takes a different form and I'm okay with that and blah, blah, so basically I'm not comfortable with speaking publicly on this. Right. And so I was like, okay, fine. I can't force you to do anything. I think you're an okay person, but if you don't want my input, fine.
Yeah.
But then, so neither of them listened to me. I'm not an expert, right? But I know I have the lived experience.
And was like, let me baby step you through this to help you not look like how you look. And they were like, no, thank you. We've got this. And here they are.
Right. So it's just like a case study of what happens when there's no people of color in the room, no matter how well-intentioned the people are, no matter how much they're trying to help, especially if they're these sort of repeat offenders who haven't gotten it right time and time again, you're not going to get it right. So I'm not saying they should have asked me for sure. I'm not an expert on anti-racism. But there are people out there who their careers are or maybe a side career or whatever, are anti-racism and diversity consultants, right? So, and they might not be in music, but they can advise you on how to handle these things in a more sensitive, productive way, whatever. But that was just clearly not done, right? They were just sort of trying to brush this under the rug and handle it in minimize the damage, I guess, if you will. And it's pretty clear. Yeah.
I mean, I think you said it, Stephen, and it kind of makes sense where it's very obvious that I haven't seen still many companies come out and say Black Lives Matter. I haven't seen anyone apologize for any of their actions. So it does feel, and I don't think it should feel this way because this isn't how unity works in general. It does feel very much like if you won't listen, we have to create our own thing. And I think I read that from one of your posts or that beautiful person we met on that other podcast. Joey, is that their name?
Oh, Joey Guidry.
It might be what
Yeah.
I read from their stuff, but
Mhm.
just it does feel that way. That like you try once, you try twice. Okay, bye. Like you can't. And it's not even I'm asking for your help, but you don't want me. You don't want me. If you're
Mhm.
not asking for my help and you're actively like hiring people who like don't look like me, you don't want me. I got it. So should we start making our own thing? And that's like a very real feeling, it seems, that's happening in this divide in percussion, because it's not the diversity in any group is not great. Is not great, I would say.
Right.
From classical music to marching band to beginner percussions in middle school, the diversity is not there. It's a problem on every single level. So what are we supposed to do when no one's willing to talk about it?
Yeah, I think it's we have to. Yeah, you're talking about like sort of building our own communities type of thing, right? And I think that can be really powerful. Like there is a certain amount that we can like change it from the inside, but the danger is that we spend all of our energy trying to help the people like this Malatech situation or any of the countless other examples like that. We spend all of our energy trying to convince them to do the right thing, but then they never do, right? So our energy might be much better spent doing something like this, where, you know, this conversation is hopefully targeted at like other people who have the best intentions and want to be part of, you know, progress and creating a better community. And so hopefully, like, you know, we can all just sort of focus our energy on each other and just do it rather than arguing with the people who don't who don't want it to happen, you know?
So basically, yeah, in Australia, there's a lot of events like that are fully white faculties, and sometimes they'll do something like this scholarship thing where they'll invite a First Nations person, Indigenous person, and they'll get them to talk at the very start. They say, you know, welcome to country. And then they'll be like, okay, we tick that box. Now let's get back to playing our white music and doing our white things. And it's like, well, come on, like you didn't really think about this at all. And you obviously don't care, and you're probably going to get away with it, but like, it's not good. You know, your students are going to think, well, I guess we should just keep quiet and not say anything about this. And that really disappoints me. So it's really nice to know that there are people out there, and I'm hoping people who watch this are aware that it only takes one step for you to start something. And if you start it, maybe other people will be like, oh, okay, we can actually do something about this. That's what I wanted to say.
And no one's perfect. Like everyone makes mistakes, and there is grace to give, but
Yes.
there comes a stopping point.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being wrong.
Right.
That's the biggest thing. And like, I think we can verge this into the tone policing thing that we wanted to talk about as well, and how so I heard from Stephen, and I hope you don't mind me explaining this on your behalf, but I heard from Stephen and Jamie that during the Marimbafest incident, some people were messaging them and saying things like, oh, you shouldn't, I don't know what the content of the messages was, but I'm assuming it was overly defensive about me or whatever. But I just wanted to say, firstly, like, you don't need to talk on my behalf. Honestly, like, I appreciate that people would want to talk on my behalf, but you do not need to talk on my behalf. Like, I'm very clear about, I always want to listen to people, and I think everyone should be like that. And I know that Stephen and Jamie have been really good at being open-minded. Like, a lot of people seem to think that people who talk the loudest only believe that they are right, but actually they just want to start dialogue. And I think that's a misunderstanding that a lot of people have. So a lot of the people who tagged me in that story during that night, it was 4 a.m. for me, and I was replying to a lot of them. They actually were, yeah, it's okay, like whatever. But everyone was messaging me ideas for the most part. There were some people who were like, you know, they were trying to get at me, and I would say, that's okay. I understand that you're upset, because at the end of the day, you have to put yourself in the oppressed person's shoes. It's very easy to be like, oh, yes, you are very upset, but that doesn't matter to me because I don't care, and you are saying that I'm racist, blah, blah, blah. No, I think when people were saying that, you know, the Marimbafest thing was promoting ideas of anti-blackness and white supremacy and the patriarchy, that wasn't an attack on me per se, but just on the idea of this festival is like, it can be so much better. And that's just straight criticism. I mean, it's the same as criticism in music. Like, if you play something not so good, and someone says, oh, maybe you can improve on that, it's not saying, well, you're just a terrible person. It's just as simple as, here's something you can do about it. And Stephen also was talking to me about this via email, and Stephen, I really appreciated all the things you said to me, because Stephen has been even in this conversation, he's been very fair. You notice that even talking about Malitech, like, Stephen has every right to be upset about the Malitech thing, but he's not like, swearing at Malitech, saying that Lee Howard Stevens should go die or something. Like, he's just being very rational about it, and he's just speaking the facts. So Steve and I had this conversation, and then he said one thing, and it's really like, I have no hard feelings towards Steve, but he said this one thing that I was like, whoa, hold on a second, and I was like really shook by it. It was this really, like, obviously he didn't mean it in a bad way. And so I explained this to Stephen, and Stephen, to his credit, he was very gracious about it, which again made me remember the Marimbafest thing again. I was like, I should have been like this too the first time. But Stephen was very receptive. I explained to him the concept, which I won't name because it will assume things, but it was a very well-known concept. And Stephen was like, I know what that is, and I'm so sorry. And he forgot, and he even forgot about all the other stuff, and he instantly just focused on that. He was like, I'm sorry for saying that. I won't do it again. I didn't realize it could be interpreted that way. And that's all that needed to happen. Because at the end of that conversation, both of us walked out as different people. Stephen realized maybe one thing he said would have been maybe not so good. I realized that I maybe have been seeing these things the wrong way, and that I should be thinking of people of color. I should be thinking of what Black people think when they see a lineup of all white people, or mostly white people, even if there is a majority of, even if there is like people of color and white people on a lineup, but no Black people. That is promoting the wrong idea. And Stephen made this very clear to me. So thank you, Stephen, because I think this conversation needs to be had a lot more. And I hope everyone who's watching this understands that we both, everybody has the opportunity to grow from these kinds of situations. It's not just like, oh, all of these activists are attacking me, blah, blah, blah. No, we are all in the same fight together.
Yes, 100%.
Can you really quick, because I didn't actually know, I was like following along your guys' email chain, and after it happened, Stephen actually emailed me. Can you say what the phrase was? Because I didn't actually know it existed. So then Stephen sent me writing on it so I could read up on it and like why it's not okay and why it lends into, what is it called, Stephen? The white...
It's called the model minority myth.
Right. Yeah. But essentially... Yeah, I mean, if people want to look up what that is, they can. And I don't mind, like, admitting that I did accidentally, like, stumble into that territory, right? But yeah, exactly like you were saying, Adam, is like, all you have to do is recognize your problem and take accountability and move on, right? And even in that moment, like when you called me out on that, I even did, but like I wanted so bad to explain how much like I didn't mean that, how much I'm not racist against Asian people, blah, 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 right? But like all of that is totally counterproductive to positive accountability, right? Like all you can do is just be like, wow, I really did that. That sucks. I'm so sorry. It doesn't matter what I intended. Maybe I didn't mean to, I didn't intend that, but like that's how it was received, and that's terrible. And I'm gonna try and do better, So yeah, I mean, just like you were saying, like we're not entering this conversation from a place of like we're the experts, we know everything. I think in our society, most people are not experts on this. Most people have a lot of work to do, and most people are going to make a lot of mistakes. We've all made lots of mistakes in the past, right? Like 10, 15 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, a lot of things were, okay to say, okay jokes to make that now you would get canceled immediately for saying. So we're all going to keep making mistakes. Like it's just about how we handle them, really.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to hear that from, it's like very easy for people to get caught up in the, but I can't be wrong because of this and this. But actually, it's the same thing as, like you were saying before, the whole idea of white people centering themselves, right? It's like whenever they get called out on something and they say, oh, but I'm not racist. Oh, but I have plenty of black friends. Oh, I have plenty of friends who are people of color and they all love me and say I'm the best. I mean, that's irrelevant. You know, like at the end of the day, you're not the one that's being oppressed, right? And it's not even a case of you have to go before a high court and get destroyed by a tribunal of people being like, you are wrong, you are the worst. Just say, oh, look, I'm sorry that happened. I realize I'm wrong and I will not do it again. And then the next time, all the things you do after that will be so much better. You will never have this problem again. Or you could just center yourself and say, I'm not racist, and continue to be in this loop of non-accountability. What's the point of that? Like, recognizing privilege is not a difficult thing to fathom, I don't think. So that's what I wanted.
Yeah, I want to go back really quick to the tone policing thing while it's still on my mind, because I don't want people to think that, you know, because I'm like present myself as not being upset and like being super reasonable, like that makes it okay.
Define tone, please, for people who don't know.
Right. I will.
Yeah, that would be.
Wait.
But so essentially, actually, no, I will right now. Tone policing is like when someone calls someone out, right? Like we post about Marimbafest. Oh, it's so awful that Marimbafest did this, put out this faculty, and the faculty was not diverse enough, right? Oh, and this is like racism and blah, blah, blah. People get rightfully upset about this, and they should be, right? It's very upsetting. And by the way, I am really upset about the Lee Howard Stevens seminar thing. Like, it ruined my whole day. Like, I was having a great day on Sunday, and I heard about that scholarship coming out, and it like totally ruined my day. But like, so people are rightfully going to react with emotional reactions, right? And it's not their responsibility to temper their reaction to sort of coddle the person who they're calling out, right? It's the person who's being called out. It's their responsibility to handle it in a way that acknowledges the hurt that they've caused to those people and to, you know, commit to doing better and own up to their mistakes. But too often we see, and this is what we saw with the Marimbafest thing, and I don't think either of us we didn't get any of these messages, but we know a couple of people who did. Like, there was someone who I know who, you know, got a message, and this happens, it's not just in this case, right? It happens pretty often, which is why we're talking about it. But someone got a message, you know, like, oh, well, you could have said that in a nicer way, right? Or you know, you didn't have to be so aggressive with that, or, you know, it's first of all, it's like devaluing the person who is doing the calling out. Right? It's sort of assuming that they are attacking as opposed to trying to create a better environment. It doesn't necessarily do much good when, and I've seen this a lot too with like very well-meaning people who want to be allies, but they come in and like explain like, oh, that person's just so upset, like don't mind them, like here, let me explain to you with the level head what happened, like let me say it in a nice way, right? Like, no, like we need to acknowledge the anger of people who are angry and like accept that and not make it okay in any way to like paint that in a negative light, right? Because that's I want to say devaluing. What is the word?
Gaslighting.
Yeah, it's essentially gaslighting. It's
making the person that had the complaint feel crazy. Essentially, you're making them the bad person in this situation instead of the person who actually did the wrong thing.
Right. Yeah, and also, you know, we need to realize that
you don't get to decide.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, and this is actually one of the big things from that chapter in So You Want to Talk About Race, or one of the things, it's not one of the big things, but is you need to recognize that it was really hard for this person to speak up in the first place, right? So you're not the only one who feels attacked. You're not the only one who feels bad, like, oh no, this person thinks I'm racist, they also, not only did they have to endure experiencing, whatever the racist thing was, but they also, it takes so much, and I think a lot of people know what this feels like. It takes so much like emotional energy to speak up about something. It's like so hard. Like, I mean, I sort of have done it more and more because it's important to me, but like still every time I write a post about something that's upsetting, I get like so anxious. I'm like shaking for the next few hours, like it's not fun, no one's, I'm not like getting glee out of like, calling people out, but like it's just to help people do better.
Yeah, you believe in this music community, you believe in the percussion community, you want them to be accountable and move forward, because a lot of people who we used to idolize are like not being the people we thought they were. And like, fix it, or kind of like, come on, guys.
Well, yeah, and like also the biggest thing that's been keeping it the way it is that people aren't speaking up, right? So people just have to speak up. That's it. It's uncomfortable and it sucks, but that's the only way through it,
Yeah, it's an important thing to say, but I mean, we're going back to the tone policing thing. It's just like, obviously I think people just misunderstand that you don't get to decide if people are upset about things, like, and it's really very difficult to say, like, I feel really strongly that something should change, and then people will say, well, you don't get to feel strongly because I'm not racist. I mean, that's literally just taking the fridge door and just closing it like in your face. It doesn't make any sense. And anyway, just like since we want to talk about this thing, about what that line is basically just it's basically when people make generalizations about any sort of culture, really, and they perceive it to be a certain way, and then it's like it just gets lost in translation and all that sort of stuff. But it was really good that Stephen recognized that not only is that sort of line, the model minority myth line, you can Google this anywhere. It's been spoken about for like 30, 40 years at least now. It hurts all kinds of people, not just Asians, not just Asian Americans, Asian Australians. Obviously, it is a term used more in Asian American culture, and I've been part of a lot of these like support groups that are allied groups with BIPOC type groups, and it's just really nice to hear these things, because recently there's been like a few COVID related race fights in America right now.
It's been really a huge problem. Yeah, it's terrible.
I'm being nice when I say a few. Yeah, it's definitely a big thing. But what is nice to see is that a lot of people are standing up and saying, do not turn this into a race war, okay? Because that's what people want you to do, is turn this into, Black people fighting Asians, blah, blah, blah. It's just not necessary, okay? Like, there's always, and it goes back to this model minority thing again, all over again. So it's like, people assume that Asians are of high social status and they must all look Chinese or whatever, and Black people can be just as successful as Asians if they work harder. Like, these are all just horrible, misguided generalizations. So it's nice to know that there is more dialogue about it, but I really hope that situation improves in the United States too. It's just too much of this, I don't know what's the word for it. It's like just the duality, it's just like, it's very simple. It's either this or this. Well, no, it's a very complex issue, and you just need to always find ways to talk about it and find ways to slowly move steps towards making more of this intersectionality idea that you were talking about, Stephen, which I think is so great.
Thank you both for letting me be a part of this. I know I wasn't involved very much in the conversation and the email exchanges, but I want you to know it was very much a learning experience for me too. And every time I hear these conversations happen, I'm learning, and I really appreciate surrounding myself with people who are such activists and continue to inspire me. So thank you both for letting me be here and being part of this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jamie.
Likewise, I want to say thank you to both of you for being part of this. Like, these conversations are they can feel so difficult and big, and I think that detracts a lot of people from having them, right? But like, the important thing is that we are having the conversations and like trying to grow and do that work. Also, thanks, Adam, for being so open to like my super long emails that I was sending you about like, like in response to the whole Marimbafest thing. Like you were really, open to that conversation. And it took us a while to get there, but we did get there and we went through that hard part. So that's good. And, hopefully this type of dialogue can continue, not just among us, but in our entire community for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much to both of you as well. And I just want to say, like, for everyone, that Spectrum does a lot of wonderful work, whether you don't see it or not. It's really, they're doing great things for the percussion community, and I wish we had groups like Spectrum often in Australia. It's something that we need to have more of, and I'm really happy that they're going to be part of our event as well this year. It's just going to be so awesome having just these new perspectives to these young students, because I think everybody needs to see different perspectives, not just the same thing that we are so used to, the norm. And Stephen, of course, I wanted to say again, thank you so much for emailing me about all of these resources and pointing me to all these new concepts that I'd heard of before. I'd heard of it referred to as something else, but you streamlined it all really well, and I really learned so much from that conversation that we had. And you were saying before that people sometimes want to have the hard conversation, but I think what we had today was actually very refreshing and very casual, and it hopefully shows the people watching this that it doesn't have to be painful and agonizing just to talk about these things. I think it's very nice when all three of us come in with an open mind and just chat, and things change almost instantly because of that. So yeah, I hope everyone watching this will endeavor to do the same thing too.
Yes, that was a great closing from a YouTube professional.
Yeah. Oh, Adam, just so you know, so my high school babies, we took them to PASIC the year before COVID happened, right? And they were doing this percussion ensemble competition, and they were like, "Is Adam Tan gonna be there?" And I was like, "Oh, that is." Yeah. I had fangirls in my group. I was like, "Yes." Just so you know.
You guys, I hope you get to come to Australia at some point. It'd be really nice to have you. Yeah, honestly, it's just
Well, you froze up, but it sounded like you were saying something nice. So
something nice from Australia. We're very excited.
I'll say it again. Sorry.
Thank you for the invite. You were paying for it. We'll sit on your couch.
You're very nice.